Steel sang through the midnight air as Princess Adise's spear blocked the assassin's blade inches from Crown Prince Dae-hyun's throat. The Korean prince's eyes widened in shock as this African woman, his unwanted bride of merely 3 weeks, twisted her weapon with practiced precision, sending the attacker sprawling across the moonlit garden. "Behind you!" Dehune shouted, recovering his composure. Adise spun, her golden anklets chiming as she drove her spear's shaft into another assassin's solar plexus. The man crumpled, gasping. 2 more shadows emerged from the ornamental trees, their faces masked, their swords gleaming with lethal intent. Dehune moved like water, his blade appearing in his hand as if summoned by thought alone. He engaged one attacker while Adise faced the other. Their weapons clashed in a deadly rhythm, the sharp crack of wood against steel, the whisper of fabric as bodies twisted and struck. The final assassin fell, and silence reclaimed the garden. Adise's chest heaved with exertion, sweat glistening on her dark skin. She turned to find Dehune staring at her with an expression she'd never seen on his perpetually cold face, genuine surprise. "You fight," he said, his voice carrying a note of wonder beneath its usual frost. "I'm a warrior princess, not a decoration." Adise planted her spear in the ground, meeting his gaze with defiance. "Did you think my father sent you a helpless ornament? But let us go back. Back to where this story truly began, 3 months earlier, when Princess Adise stood in her father's throne room in the Oyo Empire, watching King Okonkwo weep. "The drought has destroyed our crops for the 3rd year," her father's voice cracked as he addressed his council. "Our people starve. Our neighboring kingdoms smell weakness and sharpen their spears. We have no choice." Adise knew what was coming before the Korean emissaries entered, their silk robes foreign and strange, their faces unreadable. They carried chests of gold, enough gold to buy grain, hire mercenaries, rebuild what the drought had destroyed. The price? 1 princess. The kingdom of Chanlan seeks to expand its influence westward, the lead emissary explained in heavily accented Yoruba. "Our king believes a union between our peoples will create heirs with claim to both territories. Crown Prince Kang Dehune will take your daughter as his wife." Adise felt her brothers shift beside her, their hands moving toward their weapons. She placed a gentle hand on her youngest brother's arm, stilling him. "And if we refuse?" King Okonkwo asked, though everyone in the room knew the answer. "Then we take our gold elsewhere. Your kingdom will fall. Your people will scatter like dust in the Harmattan wind." That night, Adise found her father alone in the royal garden, his face buried in his hands. "Baba," she knelt beside him. "I will go." "No, my daughter. I cannot sell you like cattle. You're not selling me. You're saving our people." She took his weathered hands in hers. "I trained alongside my brothers. I learned diplomacy from Mama. I am not helpless. If my marriage can purchase our kingdom's survival, then I go willingly. But I go as a princess, not as a slave." King Okonkwo pulled her into his arms, his tears wetting her braided hair. "You have your mother's courage and your grandmother's fire. The spirits will watch over you." 3 weeks later, Adise sat in a palanquin carried by 12 men, crossing mountains she'd only heard about in stories. Her handmaiden, a Korean woman named Mai assigned to her by the emissaries, sat across from her. "The kingdom of Chanlan is not like your home, princess," Mai said softly. "It is a hard place. They call it the Mafia Kingdom because King Kang rules with an iron fist. The Crown Prince." She hesitated. "They call him the Ghost Blade. He's been trained since childhood to be a weapon, not a man." "Then I will teach him to be both," Adise replied, though her heart hammered with uncertainty. The palace of Chanlan rose before them like a mountain itself, all dark stone and sharp angles, so different from the warm earth compounds of her homeland. Soldiers lined the walls, their discipline perfect, their eyes empty. Adise stepped from the palanquin draped in her finest golden threads woven through deep purple fabric, cowrie shells clicking at her wrists and ankles, her hair piled high and adorned with her mother's crown. If she was to be a spectacle, she would be a spectacular one. The throne room fell silent as she entered. Hundreds of eyes tracked her progress across the polished floor. At the far end sat King Kang, a man whose face seemed carved from the same stone as his palace. And beside him, standing rather than sitting, was Crown Prince Kang Dae-hyun. Adise's breath caught despite herself. He was beautiful in the way a sword is beautiful, all clean lines and dangerous edges. His face showed no expression, but his eyes held something she couldn't name. Pain, fear, anger. It flickered and vanished before she could be certain. So this is the African princess, King Kang's voice boomed across the chamber. She's darker than I expected. But no matter. She'll breed strong sons. Sons who can claim both the East and the West. My son will do his duty. Adise felt heat rise in her chest at being discussed like a broodmare, but she kept her face serene. This was diplomacy. This was survival. The wedding ceremony was an elaborate fusion of traditions. Korean rituals Adise didn't understand, African customs performed by the small contingent that had accompanied her. She wore red silk and golden beads. Dehune wore ceremonial armor that made him look even more untouchable. Throughout the ceremony, he never once looked at her directly. The wedding feast stretched into the night with entertainment from both kingdoms. Adise smiled at appropriate moments, accepted congratulations from nobles whose names she'd never remember, and watched her new husband sit rigid as a statue at the head table. When tradition finally released them to their wedding chamber, Adise's heart pounded. Despite her brave words to her father, despite her warrior training, she was terrified. Not of the physical act, her mother had prepared her for that, but of the unknown man she'd been bound to. The chamber was opulent, decorated with both Korean silk screens and African Kent cloth in a gesture she suspected was meant to be welcoming but felt hollow. Dehune entered behind her, and she heard the door close with finality. She turned to face him, chin raised. So, husband. Do you intend to stand by the door all night? Dehune's jaw tightened. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold enough to frost the air between them. I'll make this simple. You'll sleep in that bed. I'll sleep in the adjoining chamber. We'll maintain appearances during the day. At night, we live separate lives. This marriage is political. Nothing more. Adise felt as if she'd been slapped. You're refusing me? On our wedding night? I'm sparing us both the pretense of affection. He turned toward the door to the adjoining room. Wait. Adise's voice came out sharper than intended. Do you prefer men? Because in my culture, such preferences are not shameful, but if that's the case, we should. No. His response was clipped, almost angry. My preferences are none of your concern. Then what? Look at me. She gestured to herself, frustration overriding humiliation. I'm not a monster. What man in his right mind rejects his wife on their wedding night? Dehune's hand clenched on the door frame, his knuckles white. For a moment, she thought she saw something crack in his perfect composure. A man who knows better than to want what he cannot keep. Sleep well, princess. The door closed behind him, leaving Adise alone in her wedding finery, trembling with confusion and wounded pride. The following weeks established a painful routine. During the day, Dehune was a ghost. He attended formal functions where protocol demanded his presence, stood beside her at court appearances, and otherwise vanished into the training grounds or war councils. He never touched her. Never spoke to her beyond what courtesy required. His eyes slid past her as if she were invisible. At night, she slept alone in their vast bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a foreign palace, missing her family with an ache that felt like illness. Adise refused to wither. If she was to be a queen in name only, she would at least understand her kingdom. She learned Korean with a ferocity that impressed even Mai. She explored the palace, memorizing its corridors and courtyards. And she discovered the training grounds. The first time she watched Dehune fight, she understood why they called him the Ghost Blade. He moved like smoke, like water, like nothing human should move. His sword seemed an extension of his body, and the soldiers he trained with couldn't touch him. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The Crown Prince has trained since he could walk, a voice said beside her. She turned to find a young soldier, his face kind. King Kang believes emotion is weakness. He beat it out of the prince before the boy turned 10. Adise's stomach twisted. Beat it out. Any display of feeling joy, sadness, even pain was punished. The prince learned to show nothing. Feel nothing. They say he's the perfect weapon. The soldier's expression darkened. But weapons don't make good husbands. That night, Adise lay awake thinking about the beautiful, broken man she'd married. A man trained to be a weapon. A man who couldn't let himself feel. The next morning, she appeared at the training grounds dressed in her African warrior attire, wrapped cloth that allowed for movement, her hair tied back, her mother's fighting braces on her wrists. The training yard fell silent. Dehune turned slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to something almost like anger. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low, dangerous. "Training. Or did you think warrior princess was merely a title?" She picked up a practice staff from the weapons rack. "Women don't train here. Go back to the palace. In my country, women who can fight do fight. I didn't cross an ocean to become soft." She moved into a fighting stance. Unless the great ghost blade is afraid of sparring with a woman? The soldiers around them muttered. Daehyun's eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're asking. Then teach me. Or are you only brave enough to ignore me?" Something flashed across his face, there and gone like lightning. He picked up a practice sword. "Fine. Let's see if your skills match your pride." They circled each other. Adise had trained with her brothers, but they'd always held back slightly, protective. Dehune held back nothing. His first strike came fast and hard. She blocked it, barely, the impact shuddering through her arms. They fought, and it was glorious. Her West African style, circular, rhythmic, using momentum, clashed with his linear Korean technique. Sweat poured down both their faces. The soldiers gathered to watch. Dehune swept her legs. She rolled, came up swinging. Her staff cracked against his sword. He twisted, nearly disarming her. She ducked under his blade and drove her elbow toward his ribs. He blocked, but she felt him acknowledge the skill behind the move. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adise saw something new in his eyes. Respect. "You actually know how to fight," he said, and it wasn't quite a question. "I told you. I'm a warrior princess, not a decoration." She wiped sweat from her brow. "Same time tomorrow?" His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Same time tomorrow." And so began a new routine. Every morning, they met in the training yard. They fought, they sparred, and slowly, so slowly Adise almost didn't notice, they began to talk. "Why do you fight like you're dancing?" Dehune asked one morning after she'd spun past his guard. "Because in my culture, war and dance share the same root. Movement is life. Rigidity is death." She demonstrated a sequence. "See? Every strike flows into the next. It's not about force, it's about momentum." He tried to copy her movement, his form too stiff. She stepped closer without thinking, placing her hand on his shoulder to adjust his stance. He froze at her touch, his entire body going rigid. "Sorry," she pulled back quickly. "I shouldn't have." "No." His voice was rough. "It's fine. Show me again." Their hands touched more after that. A correction here, a demonstration there. Each contact felt charged, dangerous, like touching a live blade. One evening, as the sun set and painted the training yard gold, Adise pinned him during a grappling exercise. She was on top of him, both of them breathing hard, her hands pressing his wrists to the ground. Their faces were inches apart. For one eternal moment, they stared at each other. She felt his heartbeat racing beneath her palms. Saw his eyes drop to her lips. Felt the tension between them become almost unbearable. Then he turned his face away. "You win. Get off." She rolled away, confused and frustrated. "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" He stood, not looking at her. "Act like you feel nothing. We're married, Dehune. We train together every day. I see the way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not watching. Why do you push me away?" His jaw clenched. "You don't understand anything about my life. Then explain it to me." Her voice rose with frustration. "I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to be your partner. But you won't let me in. You won't even try. Because if I let you in, they'll use you to destroy me." The words burst from him like a confession, raw and painful. My father already watches us. He sees everything. Any weakness, any attachment, he weaponizes it. If he knows I care about you. So you do care. Adise's heart thundered. Daehyun's expression shuttered immediately. I didn't say that. Forget this conversation happened. Go back to the palace. Dehune. Now. His voice cracked like a whip, the ghost blade returning. That's an order, princess. Adise left, but her mind churned. He'd revealed more in that moment than in all their weeks together. He was afraid. Not of her, but of what feeling anything for her would cost. That night was when the assassins came, leading to Adise saving Daehyun's life in the moonlit garden. After they defeated the assassins, palace guards flooded the garden. Captain Jin, Daehyun's most trusted soldier, examined the bodies while Adise and Dehune stood catching their breath. Soul's marking, Jin said grimly, pointing to a tattoo on one attacker's wrist. King Shin sent them. Why would Seoul attack us now? Daehyun's voice was controlled, but Adise noticed his hand trembled slightly as he sheathed his sword. We have a peace treaty. Perhaps the treaty is worth less than we thought. Jin glanced at Adise. Or perhaps someone wants something Seoul doesn't have. Daehyun's eyes followed Jin's gaze to Adise, and something dangerous flickered in them. Double the guard. I want patrols every hour. And Jin, not a word of this to my father. Your Highness. Not a word. After the guards cleared the bodies, Dehune finally turned to Adise. You saved my life. You sound surprised. I am. He studied her as if seeing her for the first time. You could have run. You could have hidden. Instead, you fought beside me. What did you think I would do? I told you I'm a warrior. She wiped blood from her spear, though her hands shook with delayed fear. Besides, if you died, who would I spar with every morning? The corner of his mouth lifted an actual smile, small but real. Come with me. He led her not to their separate chambers but to a small courtyard she'd never seen, hidden behind the eastern wing. A plum tree grew there, its blossoms pale against the night sky. A simple bench sat beneath it. This was my mother's place, Dehune said quietly. She died when I was 7. My father had this courtyard sealed afterward. I'm the only one who comes here now. Adise understood the significance of him bringing her here. What was she like? Gentle. She used to tell me stories and sing to me. My father said she made me weak. His voice hardened. After she died, he began my real training. No more stories. No more songs. No more softness. I'm sorry. Adise sat on the bench, and after a moment, he joined her. My mother died 2 years ago. I still hear her voice sometimes, telling me to stand tall, to never let anyone diminish my light. She sounds like she was strong. She was. She taught me that strength isn't about hiding what you feel, it's about feeling everything and choosing to keep going anyway. Dehune was quiet for a long time. Then, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to feel things without them consuming me. So I feel nothing instead. It's safer. Safer for whom? For everyone. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the naked pain in his eyes made her breath catch. You asked why I won't touch you. Why I push you away. It's because if I start, I won't be able to stop. And when my father uses you against me, and he will, it will destroy us both. Adise reached for his hand slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. His fingers curled around hers, trembling. What if we don't give him that power, she whispered. What if we choose each other anyway? You don't know what you're asking. Then show me. He stood abruptly, pulling away. It's late. You should rest. But this time, when he walked away, Adise noticed he looked back. The next morning, she woke to find a plum blossom on her pillow. Their training sessions grew more intense after that night. Dehune pushed her harder, but he also taught her more techniques he'd never shown anyone, secret moves from his years of brutal education. And when they fought, the air between them crackled with tension that had nothing to do with combat. One afternoon, he pinned her during grappling practice, his body pressing hers into the ground. They were both sweating, breathing hard. His face hovered above hers. You're getting better, he said, his voice low. Good teacher. Her heart raced. Stubborn student. Takes one to know one. Neither of them moved. His eyes dropped to her mouth. She felt the moment his control wavered, felt the heat of him, the weight, the want. Dehune, she breathed. He made a sound low in his throat, almost a growl, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was desperate, hungry, like a man drowning finally gasping air. His hands tangled in her hair, and she arched into him, her body responding with a need that terrified and thrilled her. Then he was pulling away, standing, turning his back to her. His shoulders heaved. That shouldn't have happened, he said roughly. But it did. Adise stood on shaking legs. And you can't pretend it didn't. Watch me. But his voice lacked conviction. That night, he came to her chambers. She was brushing her hair, wearing only her sleeping robe, when she heard the door open. She turned to find him standing there, silhouetted in the doorway, his expression tortured. Tell me to leave, he said. No. Tell me this is wrong. It's not. Tell me you don't want this. I can't. She stood, walking toward him slowly. Because I do want this. I want you. Something broke in him. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and kissed her with a passion that stole her breath. His hands were everywhere, her waist, her back, tangling in her hair. She tugged at his robes, and he lifted her, carrying her to the bed. What followed was fire. He worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, learning every curve, every place that made her gasp. She traced the scars on his back, evidence of his brutal training, with gentle fingers and fierce kisses. When he finally entered her, they both cried out, the connection so intense it felt like breaking and becoming whole at the same time. They made love with desperate intensity, as if they could make up for all the weeks of denial in one night. She rode him, her hands braced on his chest, watching his careful control shatter completely. He flipped her beneath him, pinning her wrists above her head, moving inside her with a rhythm that made her see stars. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathing hard. Stay, she whispered. Don't go back to pretending tomorrow. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I won't. I can't. Not anymore. For 3 perfect days, Adise lived in a dream. Dehune came to her every night, and they lost themselves in each other. He was tender and fierce by turns, teaching her pleasure she'd never imagined, learning her body like a sacred text. During the day, they trained together, and now when their bodies touched during combat practice, it was foreplay. The tension between them was delicious, knowing what awaited when darkness fell. But on the 4th morning, everything changed. Adise woke alone, which wasn't unusual. Dehune always left before dawn to maintain appearances. But when she arrived at the training yard, he wasn't there. She waited for an hour before Captain Jin approached, his expression troubled. The Crown Prince asked me to inform you that he'll be occupied with state matters today. He suggests you rest. Rest? Adise frowned. Is something wrong? Jin hesitated, then shook his head. I don't know, Your Highness. He seemed different this morning. She didn't see Dehune all day. At dinner, she took her usual place beside him at the high table, but he didn't acknowledge her arrival. His face was that perfect mask again, the ghost blade, empty and cold. Dehune, she said quietly. Crown Prince, he corrected, his voice like ice. We're in public, Princess. Use proper titles. Adise felt as if he'd struck her. Around them, court officials pretended not to notice, but she saw the knowing smirks, the whispered comments behind fans. Heat flooded her face, not embarrassment, but anger. When a minister asked for her opinion on a trade matter, she began to respond, but Dehune cut her off. The Queen's opinions are quaint. But perhaps we should leave complex political matters to those with experience. His tone was dismissive, almost mocking. The table fell silent. Adise's hands clenched in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. She finished the meal in silence, her food tasting like ash. That night, she waited in her chambers, but he didn't come. Or the next night. Or the night after that. A week passed. Dehune avoided her completely. When forced into proximity at official functions, he treated her with cold courtesy, polite and distant, as if their passionate nights had never happened. As if she meant nothing. Adise tried to confront him twice. The first time, he simply walked away. The second time, in the privacy of the garden, she grabbed his arm. What happened? Why are you doing this? He looked at her hand on his arm as if it were something distasteful, then met her eyes with such coldness that she released him. I told you this marriage was political. You chose to read more into it. That's not my problem. You're lying. 3 nights ago, you held me and told me. 3 nights ago, I was bored and you were available. His voice was cruel, calculated to wound. Don't mistake physical need for emotion. You're a queen in name only, Adise. A pretty ornament my father bought to breed heirs. Nothing more. She slapped him. The sound cracked across the garden like a whip. His head snapped to the side, but he didn't react beyond that. When he looked back at her, his cheek bore the red imprint of her hand, but his eyes remained empty. Feel better? He asked coldly. No. Her voice shook with rage and hurt. But I feel clearer. You're a coward, Dehune. You hide behind your father's cruelty and your own fear, and you hurt people because you're too weak to let yourself feel anything real. Something flickered in his eyes, there and gone. Believe what you want. I'm leaving. The words came out before she'd fully decided, but once spoken, she knew they were true. I'd rather die crossing the desert than live as your whore. You won't make it past the gates. My father's guards will stop you. Then I'll die trying. Because anything is better than this. She turned to leave, then looked back. You know what the saddest part is? I actually thought you were brave. I thought beneath all that ice was someone worth knowing. But you're just empty. Your father succeeded. He made you exactly what he wanted, a weapon with no heart. She walked away, and this time he didn't stop her. Adise spent the next 2 days planning her escape. Mai helped her, though the handmaiden wept as she did so. You'll never survive the journey alone, princess, Mai said as she packed supplies. I survived coming here. I'll survive leaving. Adise folded her traveling clothes with determined hands. I can't stay in a place where I'm treated like property. Where the man she stopped, swallowing hard. I won't live like this. What Adise didn't know was that Mai had been reporting to someone else all along. That night, as Adise slept fitfully, Mai slipped from the palace to meet a cloaked figure in the market district. She plans to leave tomorrow at dawn, Mai whispered. Perfect. The figure's voice was smooth, satisfied. King Shin will be pleased. When she's outside the palace walls and vulnerable, we'll take her. Tell her nothing. You've done well. Mai accepted her payment with trembling hands, guilt eating at her. But she'd been promised enough gold to save her own family from starvation. What was one foreign princess against the lives of her starving siblings? Meanwhile, in the palace, Captain Jin knocked urgently on Daehyun's chamber door. The prince opened it, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. What? Daehyun's voice was harsh. My prince, I've discovered something. Your Highness, the Queen's handmaiden Mai is a spy. Dehune went very still. Explain. I've been suspicious for weeks. Tonight, I followed her. She met with an agent from Seoul. They spoke of taking the Queen tomorrow when she attempts to leave the palace. Jin's expression was grave. My prince, King Shin of Seoul has been planning this since her arrival. There are rumors throughout the kingdom, rumors that she carries mystical power in her bloodline, that whoever possesses her will gain legitimacy to rule both East and West. Shin believes if he takes her, he can overthrow both Seoul's current king and challenge Chanlan. Daehyun's hands clenched into fists. How long until they arrive? 2 days. Maybe less. They'll attack while she's outside the walls, vulnerable. My prince. Jin hesitated. She's leaving because of you. Whatever you did to push her away. I know what I did. Daehyun's voice was raw. I thought if I made her hate me, if I drove her away from me emotionally, my father couldn't use her against me. I thought I was protecting her. Instead, you're sending her directly into danger. Daehyun moved fast, pulling on his sword belt. Find her. Bring her to me. Now. But Adise was already awake, preparing for her dawn departure. When Jin arrived with 4 guards, She faced them with her chin raised. "I'm not going back to those chambers," she said firmly. "The Crown Prince requests your presence in his mother's courtyard," Jin said gently. "Please, Your Highness. It's urgent." Something in his tone made her agree. She followed him through the dark palace, her heart pounding. When she entered the hidden courtyard, she found Dehune standing beneath the plum tree, his back to her. "I'm only here because Jin asked," she said coldly. "Say whatever you need to say, then let me go." Dehune turned. In the moonlight, she could see his face clearly and was shocked by what she saw there. The mask was gone. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expression ravaged. "You can't leave," he said hoarsely. "Watch me. Seoul is coming for you. King Shin wants you because he believes your bloodline holds power. If you leave the palace, his men will take you. They'll use you or kill you, and his voice cracked. "I can't let that happen. Why do you care? I'm just an ornament, remember? A pretty thing your father bought." I lied. The words burst from him like a confession. "Everything I said to you that night in the garden was a lie. I thought if I made you hate me, if I pushed you away, you'd be safe. My father watches everything. He looks for weaknesses to exploit. If he knew how much he stopped, his jaw clenching. I was trained from childhood that love is a weapon enemies use against you. That caring about anyone makes you vulnerable. So I tried to cut you out of my heart before you could be used to destroy me. So you chose to destroy me instead." Adise's voice shook. "Yes." His voice broke completely. "And I was wrong. I thought I was being strong, but you were right, I'm a coward. I'm so afraid of feeling anything that I hurt the one person who saw past the weapon to the man underneath. You asked me once why I push you away. The truth is, my father said he'd kill you if I showed any weakness. He said love is a chain enemies use to drag you to hell. I thought if I made you hate me, you'd be safer. But all I did was break your heart and send you into worse danger." Adise's anger warred with the pain in his voice, the honesty in his eyes. "So what now? You confess your feelings and expect me to forgive you? To stay in this place where I'm treated like property? No." Dehune moved closer, his hands held out as if approaching something precious and fragile. "I expect nothing. I deserve nothing. But I'm asking, begging, for a chance to prove that what we had was real. That when I held you, when I made love to you, when I whispered your name in the dark, I meant every moment." Pretty words. But her voice wavered. "Then let me show you with actions." He dropped to his knees before her, and the gesture was so unexpected, so shocking from the proud crown prince, that Adise gasped. "I am a weapon, Adise. You were right about that. My father forged me in cruelty and pain, and I know no other way to be. But you make me want to learn. You make me want to be a man instead of a blade. Stay. Please. Let me protect you. Let me prove that I can be worthy of you." Tears burned in Adise's eyes. "How do I know you won't just push me away again when things get difficult? You don't. I can only promise to try. And if I fail, if I hurt you again, then leave. I won't stop you. But right now, Seoul is coming, and they'll be here in 2 days. Let me keep you safe. After that, the choice is yours." Before Adise could respond, warning bells erupted across the palace. Captain Jin burst into the courtyard, his face pale. "They're here. Seoul's forces are at the gates." Shin didn't wait, his attacking now. Dehune was on his feet instantly, his hand going to his sword. "How many?" "At least 300. They've breached the outer walls. They're fighting toward the palace, and my prince, they're calling for the queen. Shin is leading them personally. Get her to the safe room," Dehune commanded. "No." Adise's voice rang clear and strong. "If they're coming for me, I won't hide like a coward. Give me a weapon. Adise. I said give me a weapon." Her eyes blazed. "I'm a warrior, remember? I didn't save your life in the garden just to cower in a room while men fight over me like I'm a prize. We end this together, or not at all." Dehune looked at her, and something fierce and proud burned in his eyes. "Jin, get her a spear. And armor. My prince, the king will. My father can go to hell. She fights beside me." 10 minutes later, Adise stood in the throne room wearing light armor that had been hastily adjusted to fit her frame, her spear in hand. Dehune stood beside her in full battle armor, his sword drawn. Around them, Chanlan's elite guards formed a defensive line. The doors burst open. Seoul's soldiers poured in, and behind them strode King Shin, a tall man with cruel eyes and a smile that made Adise's skin crawl. Crown Prince Dae-hyun, Shin's voice boomed across the throne room. Stand aside. I've come for what should have been mine. The African queen belongs at my side, not wasted on a man too cold to appreciate her worth. She belongs to no one but herself, Dehune replied, his voice deadly calm. And you'll have to go through me to touch her. That can be arranged. Shin drew his sword, a massive blade that gleamed red in the torchlight. I've waited years for this. They say you're the greatest swordsman in the East. Let's test that claim. The two forces clashed. Steel rang against steel, men shouted and died. Adise found herself fighting beside Dehune, their movements synchronized from weeks of training together. She spun and struck, her spear finding targets, while Dehune flowed like water around her, his blade singing its deadly song. But King Shin was powerful, stronger and more brutal than Dehune's elegant technique could easily counter. They fought across the throne room, destroying furniture, leaving trails of blood. Adise dispatched 3 of Shin's guards, but more kept coming. Then Shin did something unexpected. He feinted toward Dehune but suddenly pivoted, his blade flashing toward Adise. She barely got her spear up in time, but the force of his blow sent her sprawling. Her spear skittered across the floor. Finally, Shin breathed, standing over her, his sword raised. The queen is mine. No. Dehune's scream was primal, anguished. He threw himself between them just as Shin's blade descended. The sword pierced Dehune's shoulder, driving deep. He gasped, blood blooming across his armor, but even as he fell, his own blade struck true, driving up under Shin's ribs and into his heart. Both men collapsed. Dehune. Adise scrambled to him, her hands pressing against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. His blood was hot and slick between her fingers. No, no, no. You don't get to do this. You don't get to sacrifice yourself after everything. Stay with me. His hand found hers, weak and trembling. Had to protect you. Couldn't let him. You're not dying. Do you hear me? You're not allowed to die. Tears streamed down her face. Jin, get healers. Now. Around them, Seoul's forces faltered. Their king was dead. Chanlan's soldiers pressed their advantage, and the invaders broke, fleeing back through the shattered doors. But Adise saw none of it. Her world had narrowed to Dehune's pale face, his labored breathing, the terrifying amount of blood. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. You were right. I was empty. But you filled me. Made me feel. Made me. Stop talking. Save your strength. Her voice broke. Please, Dehune. Please don't leave me. Not now. Not when I finally know you love me. His eyes focused on her face with effort. Always loved you. From the first moment. Too afraid to admit it. Then stay. Fight. Be brave enough to live with me instead of dying for me. His eyes closed. The next 3 days were agony. Dehune lay in his chambers, hovering between life and death while the palace healers worked frantically to save him. Adise never left his side. She used every bit of West African herbal medicine her mother had taught her, supplementing the Korean techniques. She ground medicines, changed bandages, and whispered prayers to her ancestors and his. On the second night, his fever spiked dangerously. She climbed into the bed beside him, pressing her cool body against his burning skin, whispering to him in Yoruba and Korean both. You came back for me once, she whispered against his hair. When I was alone in a foreign land. You trained with me. You showed me your mother's garden. You let me see the man beneath the weapon. Now I'm asking you to come back again. Fight, Dehune. Fight like you've never fought before. Because I need you. Our kingdom needs you. And our child, her voice broke. Our child needs a father. She hadn't told anyone yet. Hadn't even been certain herself until the palace physician confirmed it that morning while treating her minor injuries. She was carrying Daehyun's baby, conceived during those passionate nights before he pushed her away. On the third day, his fever broke. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then finding her face. She was slumped in a chair beside the bed, exhausted, her hand holding his. Adise, his voice was barely a whisper. She jerked awake, her eyes going wide. You're awake. Oh ancestors, you're awake. She pressed her hands to his face, needing to feel the warmth, the life in him. How do you feel? Like I was stabbed. A ghost of his dry humor. Did we win? Shin is dead. Seoul's forces retreated. Chanlan is safe. She smoothed his hair back gently. And you're alive. That's all that matters. My father. Under house arrest. While you were unconscious, Captain Jin and I presented evidence of his dealings with Seoul, his plans to use me as a political pawn, his cruelty toward you. The council voted to strip him of power pending your recovery. When you're well enough, they'll formally name you king. Dehune stared at her in shock. You did that. I'm not just a pretty ornament, remember? I learned politics from my mother. And Jin was very helpful. She smiled through her tears. Your father won't hurt either of us again. He tried to sit up and winced. She helped him, propping pillows behind him. His hand touched her face with infinite tenderness. I meant what I said before Shin stabbed me. I love you. I've loved you since you first challenged me in the training yard, maybe even before that. I was just too broken to know what love felt like. And now, her heart thundered. Now I know it feels like you. Like coming home after being lost in the cold. He pulled her closer despite his injury. If you'll forgive me for being such a spectacular fool. I already have. She kissed him softly, carefully, mindful of his wounds. Because I love you too. Even when I hated you, I loved you. Even when you pushed me away, I loved you. And now, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. Now we're going to have a child who will be loved from both of us. Who will never be trained as a weapon. Who will know joy and songs and gentleness. Daehyun's eyes filled with tears, the first she'd ever seen him cry. A child, he breathed in wonder. We're going to have a child. Yes. A bridge between our worlds. A symbol of what we've built together. She pressed her forehead to his. If you want. Adise, you've given me everything. A reason to feel. A reason to fight. A reason to live. And now this. His voice cracked with emotion. I spent my whole life believing I was nothing but a weapon. You taught me I could be a man. A husband. And now, a father. They held each other, careful of his injuries, and wept together tears of relief and joy and hope. 2 months later, Dehune had recovered enough to stand before the royal council. With Adise beside him, his queen in truth now, not just in name, he accepted the crown. King Kang watched from house arrest as his son became everything he'd tried to prevent, a man who ruled with both strength and compassion. The coronation was a fusion of Korean and African traditions. Adise wore a gown that blended Korean silk with African Kent cloth, gold threads weaving both cultures together. Dehune wore traditional royal armor, but across his chest he wore a sash of African fabric, a gift from Adise's father, who had traveled from the Oyo Empire to witness his daughter crowned as queen. You've made me proud, King Okonkwo said, embracing Adise after the ceremony. I sent you here hoping you'd survive. Instead, you've thrived. You've transformed a kingdom. I learned from the best, Adise replied, holding her father close. You taught me that true strength is knowing when to bend and when to stand firm. I bent when I needed to. I stood firm when it mattered. That night, Dehune found Adise in their chambers, standing by the window with her hand on her now visible belly. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. How far we've come. How you once told me this marriage was political and nothing more. How I once believed you were nothing but ice. She turned in his arms, her eyes bright. And now look at us. Now we're partners. Equals. Lovers. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You transformed me, Adise. You took a weapon and taught it to be human. You were always human. You just needed permission to remember. She pulled him closer. And now we get to teach our child what we learned, that love isn't weakness. That feeling deeply is the greatest strength. That two worlds can become one if people are brave enough to try. Their son was born 6 months later during a spring rainstorm. He had his mother's dark skin and his father's sharp features, his mother's fierce spirit and his father's quick intelligence. They named him Dehune, a fusion of both their languages, meaning crown of joy. King Dehune would grow up in a palace where Korean and African traditions blended seamlessly, where his parents ruled as true partners, where love was celebrated rather than punished. He would learn swordplay from his father and staff combat from his mother. He would speak Korean and Yoruba with equal fluency. And he would hear the story of how his parents' love transformed a kingdom. But that night, holding their newborn son between them, Dehune and Adise simply marveled at the miracle they'd created. "Thank you," Dehune whispered, his finger tracing their son's tiny hand. "For not giving up on me. For seeing past the ghost blade to the man I could become. Thank you for being brave enough to love me," Adise replied, tears streaming down her face. "For sacrificing yourself to protect me. For choosing us over fear." They kissed over their sleeping son, two people from different worlds who'd built a bridge of love strong enough to span continents and cultures. Years later, travelers would speak of the Kingdom of Chanlan, where a Korean king and an African queen ruled with wisdom and compassion, where their mixed-race children represented the future, where two cultures had blended into something beautiful and new. They called it the Golden Age, when love proved stronger than fear, when courage meant opening your heart instead of closing it, when the ghost blade became a man and the purchased princess became a queen who transformed a kingdom. And in the palace's hidden courtyard, beneath a plum tree that bloomed every spring, you could sometimes find the king and queen sitting together, holding hands, remembering the journey that brought them there. From transaction to transformation. From enemies to lovers. From two broken people to one unbreakable union. This was their story. This was their triumph. And it all began with a simple truth, that love, when fought for fiercely enough, can conquer even the coldest heart. If you enjoyed this story of Adise and Dehune's journey from arranged marriage to true love, please like this video, subscribe for more epic romance stories, and comment below telling us which moment touched your heart most. Should we create more stories exploring their reign and their children's adventures? Let us know. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next chapter of love across cultures.